My mother was older. She was 42 when I was born, and my father died when I was 12. We lived on a farm, so she hadn't a lot of time for sitting around discussing things. So I learned by watching her and what she did. She made her all her own bread, and she churned her own butter. I preferred to be out working on the farm if I had the choice, but one of my jobs was making the custard, and I always still make custard myself. My daughters laugh at me and they tell me I should buy bought custard, but I tell them no, that's not the same. It doesn't taste right. She was old-fashioned in some ways, and she always insisted we wear tights under our uniform because she thought it was more modest, whereas most of the girls would have worn white knee socks. And she loved the colour blue and wore it a lot and dressed us in it. But she didn't think red suited us. You know, she thought red didn't look nice on fair-haired children. She had her good clothes for going out, and other clothes for day wear. I'm inclined to follow her in this lead and keep up my clothes for certain clothes for special occasions. I remember when my grandson was small, he used to say to me, "Are you going to work, Granny?" And I said, "Yeah, how did you know?" And he said, "Because of what you're wearing." My proudest moment. When my children were small, I was a stay-at-home mother. It wasn't usual for women to work at that time. In fact, when I was working in the civil service, the marriage ban had just been changed. So when I went back to work, it was in the 80s and jobs were scarce. So I got a job under a project that employed people in community work. The wages weren't great, but as part of it, you could do training. So when I was there, I applied to do accounting technician course, but the trainer said, "Oh no, you couldn't do that. It'd be too hard for you." But my project leader, he actually put in a word for me, and I got to do it. It involved doing 8 exams over 2 years, and to get a distinction, you had to get a merit in each of them. So I got that, and I was so proud because I'd been told that I wouldn't have been able to do it. Family traditions. Reading was a family tradition in my family. My uncle was a great reader, but it was hard to get books because we were living in a very rural area. So my brothers and sisters, we all liked to read, and we used to borrow my uncle's books. I remember reading Westerns when I was 10. I still like to read. In fact, I prefer reading over television, and some of my children and grandchildren like reading as well. So I'm very proud of my grandson. When he was down a couple of weeks ago, he told me he was reading a Ray Bradbury story. He's only 13, which is fairly unusual for kids that age to be reading stories like that. Bonfires would also have been a tradition. But we had our bonfire on June the 23rd, St. John's Eve, whereas in Dublin it's at Halloween. We also didn't do trick-or-treating, but we would have played indoor games like bobbing for apples. Christmas, we would have all sat around the table at Christmas and had a chat, which we still do in my family now. But we would have had goose for Christmas rather than turkey. Fondest memory of a family celebration. I picked this day because it was packed with family celebrations. It was my granddaughter's first Holy Communion, so my husband and I went to church for that, and then we went to the school afterwards for light refreshments. Then we came back to Blanchardstown, where she had booked a pub and finger food for the rest of the family and her friends. My husband and I had to take the communion girl's older brother and take him to a hurling match. It was important for him because it was a semi-final. He later went on to win the under-16s hurling final. After that, we had to drop him back to Blanchardstown, and we had to head up to Tyrone because my other daughter was taking part in the Strictly Come Dancing for charity, and she would have liked us to be there for her. We stayed the night with her, and we were glad to see our beds because it was a long day, but it was a very enjoyable one. A time I was scared. When Felicia brought this up, I had to think about that, and there was many things I was scared about. But yeah, I said this would have been the most scary time. It was the 19th of May 1974, and I was working in a Connell Bridge house. There was a bus strike on. So I had to walk home to Phibsboro. Normally we would have got off at 5:30, but because it was Friday, we got off at 5:15. So I had just reached the end of O'Connell Street and passed into the start of Parnell Square at 5:30. But just as I'd arrived at the first building in Parnell Square, there was a loud bang, and I knew it was a bomb. The girl beside me got a piece of glass in her hand. It was very scary because oftentimes the second bomb would have gone off just afterwards. So I raced off straight away. When I got home, I was still very nervous. Afterwards, I realised how lucky I was, because a lot of the people that were killed were girls the same age as myself, up from the country, working in the civil service. How has my community served me? When I grew up, it was a very, very, very peaceful and Lower area where all the neighbours got on very well and came together to help at times like the trashing. And if there was a tragedy in the family or somebody needed help. I've been living in Blanchardstown for the last 35 years, and I'm very lucky. I have a nice house and good neighbours and friends. And beside us we have hospitals, and good doctors, a big community centre just a walk away. We also have theatre and library and cinema, which I use a lot. We also have the Millennium Park, which I train for the mini marathon, and I take my dog for a walk. So we're very, very lucky for those reasons where I'm living. How has my community failed me? I find that the community is not as helpful now as it was. Things seem to be taking a downturn. Services are not nearly as good as they used to be. There's the drugs problem, and instead of increasing services, the services have been cut back. The same with the health service. Waiting lists are getting much longer. Then there's the homeless crisis, and it's such a tragedy to see families being homeless, which had never happened in the past. I hope this will take a change in the future, but I'm not too sure about that. How I serve my community. I've actually always been involved in the community in some ways. When my children were small, I was involved in the Irish Preschool Playgroups Association. Then I went on to take part in summer projects. I was involved I was on the management committee of the Parents Association in the community school, and I was on the community development project and the Estate Management Association. When I went back to work as well, I was in the work I was all community work. The first job I was involved in was in a youth project, and then I went on to work in a community drug project. When I started working in community, actually it was for kind of selfish reasons. It was a way of getting out to meet people, because all my family was down the country. I didn't have family, and I had moved into a new area, so I didn't know people. So it was a great way of getting to know people. I think most people probably join community work for personal reasons, but it doesn't take away from all the work that's been done.